Around the NFL podcast. Explains their jokes to make sure you got them.
It's important. From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm Dan Hansis with Greg Rosenthal and Mark Sessler, the flagship show. Did you notice that? Did you notice I just did there?
It's Around the NFL.
Because I didn't want to double dip on the podcast.
Right.
As we discussed last week, and I'm workshopping it. How did that sound?
Good.
Well, you're
very natural.
Yeah, you're a skilled broadcaster who every couple of months, we just see you taking the next leap, and that was part of that process, I think.
All right. Well, let me know. Actually, don't tell me. I don't care. I'm going to start saying it that way. And if there's a real uprising amongst the fans,
I think it was an improvement.
I'll send it back. Okay. That's it.
The uprising with the fans, we can, let's move on to new things at this point. There's been a lot of that.
Week 9 in the NFL. It existed to remind us this Sunday, again, and this is important, that we don't know shit. and that's good. That's what makes our league so fun. There were multiple outcomes today that kind of turned the league on its ear a little bit and makes you think about both the AFC and the NFC differently. We're going to get into those games, Greg. I mean, I'm sure you were stunned. The way our seating arrangement is in the newsroom now, I can't really see you. I hear sounds emanating from your area, but I can't see your reactions as much as at the old place. Were you stunned by some of the outcomes today?
No, I expected Teddy Bridgewater to go into Dallas and lead them to a 30-0 lead with 5 minutes left, tripling them in yardage. That's what the team of THAL does.
Oh, he's back.
No, I'm just kidding. It was shocking. And my morning games were delightful. I'm excited.
Do you think Von Miller, who by the way was inactive tonight for Sunday Night Football, as he recovers from that ankle issue? Do you think he was a little annoyed when he saw that today? Even though he's like, I love Denver, the Broncos are part of me forever. Like when they go to Dallas and go up 30-0 and shock the football world, do you think he's like, well, we didn't need to do that?
I think that we would like to think he's annoyed. But I mean, as people, we've all been away at times when this show occurs. Me, recently for a stretch. And you don't want the show to be that much better without you. And then when you find out maybe that it is, it's like, I don't know if I like that dynamic.
Interesting.
Insight.
Yet they've won.
What, you would disagree?
They won 2 without Von Miller. I don't think he's so much focused on that, but I think there's another guy in Green Bay that was just fine watching their offense look like it was 1954.
Yes, Aaron Rodgers showed his whole ass last week, and because of it, he did not play on Sunday, leaving Jordan Love at the controls. It did not go so well for the Pack. Let's start.
Mahomes moving to his right, trying to keep the play alive. Still moving. He fires it on the run. Caught! First down at the Green Bay 35-yard line. Tyreek Hill on a 13-yard reception. Mahomes able to move to his right at 90 degrees and finds Tyreek Hill, who leads the National Football League on third down receptions for first downs.
I wish he said our league. That would have been – Mitch Holtis nailed that call. WDAF, but I wanted an hour league in a big spot. It was yet another slog on offense for the Chiefs, but when it mattered most, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill showed they can still make some magic together. The QB and wideout connected on that 13-yard completion that clinched a 13-7 win over the Packers at Arrowhead. Greg, Green Bay's offense struggled to find its way with Jordan Love at quarterback, but you know what? Kansas City has turned winning ugly into a necessity, let's face it.
They're winning ugly in such a different way than when they were winning ugly at the tail end of the last regular season, when they kept winning close, high-scoring games. Now they're winning close, low-scoring games, or the offense is, turning the ball over. When they were turning the ball over, that sounds like a light problem compared to what we've seen the last couple of weeks. This is just an offense that isn't moving the ball, and yet I know Chiefs fans are annoyed with everyone talking about them that they're like a 1-8 team. They won this game with defense. They've played really good defense for 10 straight quarters. They got some fortune on special teams. I would say between a blocked field goal, they get a little credit for that, a missed field goal, and then a totally botched punt by the Packers. The Chiefs' special teams basically scored 9 points. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, was as big a difference in this game as anything. But you have to look at what Steve Spagnuolo did on defense in terms of cooking up Jordan Love.
Blitz.
Love went 6 for 17 for 30 yards against the blitz. So a part of the game plan was working, and they kept hammering it over and over and over, basically until the fourth quarter when the Packers finally started moving the ball a little.
It was, for games that I think we get excited about the concept of, the worst game of the year in terms of what we were forced to watch to some degree. I mean, I am left questioning a little bit if you are the people that have been, in charge of developing Jordan Love. He's been in the building for 24 games, and forget the COVID offseason, but let's say one full real offseason and hundreds of practices, and he looked today like watching a high school game where someone is being thrown into quarterback for the first time. To me, it clout. I said on our Friday network show that it was maybe a blessing in disguise for Green Bay to see Jordan Love and what he could offer in a big spot like this. He offered not nothing, but less than nothing to some degree, and I think it leaves you a little cloudy with what the future is if Aaron Rodgers does want to bolt out of here.
I see what you're saying. I guess I didn't come out of this game thinking that he's not any good or should have been better. I still think it was a tough situation to kind of come into on the road in that environment. I know Kansas City's defense isn't very good, but I didn't come out of it feeling like, oh, man, this is a major issue. One thing I did get annoyed with was some of the online takes coming out of this game, like that this was somehow – Aaron Rodgers nailed this. And it's like, there's one tweet of a blank check, like Aaron Rodgers smiling. It's like, whoa, Aaron Rodgers cost his team this game because Aaron Rodgers on the field, they win. I'm sorry. The way Kansas City's playing right now, the way they played once again, I'm just going to go through this. And, Greg, you had mentioned it downstairs, or I guess it's on the same floor. We're on the same floor as the newsroom. They had the opening touchdown drive. And then real quick, this was like their yardage and the outcome of the drives before they sealed the game on that Tyreek reception. 7 yards, loss of downs, 25 yards punt, 9 yards punt, 4 yards field goal, 25 yards gain field goal, halftime, 0 yards punt, 7 yards punt, 39 yards punt, -1 yards punt. That is what's happened to Kansas City's offense. And if you have Aaron Rodgers in the game there, they're 8-1 right now, and he wasn't, and they're not, and that's something to keep in mind.
I think we should also point out Eric Stokes, the rookie first-round pick, who's played well at cornerback, especially without Jair Alexander, got hurt in pregame warmups, didn't play. Alexander, as I mentioned, didn't play. Kenny Clark, so good up front, got hurt early, didn't play the rest of the game after that. Zadarius Smith, of course, has been out all year. This was a totally banged-up Packers team that lost 2 key starters during the game, and that is the spot where you expect the Chiefs' offense just to roll. If it wasn't for the special teams blunders and the short fields, I don't know how this game looks. But for Mark to go on about Jordan Love, kind of like Troy Aikman did, I think was warranted. I get all the defense of Jordan Love and the reasons why this was a difficult spot and everything, but he looked about as unready for a starting job as any quarterback that I've seen play a game this year. Like if Davis Mills was out there and had this game, we'd all kill Davis Mills for his first start playing this game. Like he wasn't ready to do 2-minute hurry-up situations. They were struggling with the play clock. You can put this on the coaching staff too, that he wasn't ready, but he was also just missing passes. I think his stat line is misleadingly decent, but I think if you watched the snaps, it's just one start, but it was a concerning start.
It's maybe it looks like, listen, it's just one. I agree with you. It's a beginning, but
it takes a lot for Troy Aikman to go as nuts as he was going. He was pulling his hair out.
He was unpleased with it. But I mean, then, his line was better than Mahomes for much of this game, which is equally stunning. And Mahomes has 36 incompletions over 2 weeks.
And I guess I'm saying criticize Jordan Love for playing poorly because he did. He's a professional. But be mad at Aaron Rodgers for putting his team in this situation.
Totally fair.
That is what. And before we move on to the next game, again, this is weird. And we're getting used to it now, but it doesn't change the fact how weird it is. The Chiefs finished with 237 yards of total offense at Arrowhead Field, Arrowhead Stadium, a place where that would not be that's like a decent halftime total yardage for them in their heyday. They've done that in one quarter in the past, averaging less than 4 yards per play. That's where the Chiefs are halfway through this season. They're 5-4. There's time, but there's a lot of trouble in Kansas City. Let's move on.
The potential hero is coming on. Will be a 36-yarder.
Tucker hit from 37 in the first half. Game on the line. 20 seconds left in overtime. Nick Moore with the snap. Tucker's kick is up, and it is good! The Ravens have won it in overtime. The hay's in the barn, and the Ravens are 6-2.
Jerry Sandusky with the call. WBAL. Nobody climbed into the booth to try to get to the bar. Again, not enough was made. The crazed military woman climbing into the booth because there was booze in there. Where's the booze?
There's a lot going on there.
It's like I'm rewatching Mad Men right now when they had all the booze in all the offices. No booze in our office. No, at least not that they know of.
But I mean, you said she was a crazed military woman. If that's accurate, she's probably going to see the world differently than through a different lens than you might.
Perhaps a drunken military woman. She was not having her best day. Anyway, Justin Tucker kicked a 36-yard field goal, 16 seconds left in overtime, pulling the Ravens ahead of the Vikings for good. 34-31 was the final. I think is the third overtime for both teams this year, which is a lot. And the AFC North leading Ravens rallied from a 14-point third-quarter deficit. In overtime, Anthony Barr made a tremendous play, leaping in the air on a Lamar Jackson attempt when they were moving into field goal range, batting it up in the air, coming downward for the interception. And then Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense comes on the field. And you want to talk about offenses that are in a little bit of trouble right now. 3 and out. Bye-bye. Kick it away. Never get the ball back. Baltimore marches down the field, kicks the field goal. And the reason why that was such a crusher to go so quickly 3 and out after that potential game-changing interception in overtime was Baltimore was on the field, their offense, all game. Minnesota's defense was cooked. The Vikings only ran 52 plays in an overtime game. The Ravens, that final kick was the 89th play of the game for the offense of the Ravens. So there are a lot of issues right now, Mark, with the Minnesota offense, which does this weird thing where they get out of the gate super hot. And I reached out to LA Research on this because it felt like they score a touchdown every week on their first drive and then go cold.
It's a Dan Hansis shout out.
All right, Paul Rudd. The Vikings have now scored 41 points on their first possessions this season, 5 touchdowns, 2 field goals, 1 punt. And then they just go ice cold. And it happened again in this game, and it cost them, and they are slipping out of the playoff picture as a result.
It's who they are. I think we all know Vikings fans. I kind of want to wish that I could knit a sweater for every Vikings fan out there because they're having a terrible. It's just they're heartbroken at this point. This is how this from on the flip side. This was Baltimore's.
That's the nicest thing that you could do for them. You don't have any experience in that in Rome as a.
It also would take about 17,000 hours, but it's the thought. It's the thought. This, though, from Next Gen Stats, kind of told me a lot about both teams. It was Baltimore's 4th win this season, where they had a win probability of 15% or lower at some point in the second half. They're up by 14 points twice in this game, but a lot of it has to do with you're playing the Vikings, so you know it's going to go down to the end. You know they're going to be streaky. You're going to get your Kirk Cousins moments. They've got so much talent on offense, and Dalvin Cook had a good game. Justin Jefferson, it's like somehow they cannot find a way to seal these contests.
Dalvin Cook didn't really have a good game. Dalvin Cook had a 66-yard run that was beautiful in the first half of this game.
We'll have to track that more closely.
And did nothing else for the most part. And that was the thing, and this is what's weird about their offense, Greg, and we're going to get to the winning team because that's more important. But that first drive, they're awesome. When their backs are against the wall.
Next drive, they scored a touchdown, too, to go up 14-0, right? And then it
first
went
two.
really cold.
So they went, so they start off hot, and from that second score till they got a kickoff return for a touchdown out of the half, and then they go ice cold all around that until they absolutely have to score at the end of regulation, and they get that touchdown too. There's just some type of urgency issue with the team, and Baltimore, I will give them this. They are imperfect. Greg, remember you talking before the trade deadline? This team needs to make some moves on the deadline. They did. They tried. Some reports have come out that they try to make some moves to make their roster better. It's an imperfect roster, but again, they showed why they are a winning organization. They hung around in this game, kept on coming back, and eventually broke Minnesota's will.
We're just getting used to these Lamar Jackson games where they're down 2 touchdowns. It's funny to think how the MO on him was they can't fall behind in games, and he ends up with 120 yards rushing, and then the 268 and the 3 touchdowns and the 2 interceptions passing. Like this is just sort of what the Ravens are this year, but they did pile up 36 first downs. The fact that they were able to run the ball, to me, is a good sign moving forward, because they really haven't. It wasn't just Lamar, it was Devontae Freeman, even Le'Veon Bell, who I really thought would be cut by now, but it hasn't happened. Had some yards.
Yeah, no, he did some things in this game, and so yeah, the Ravens are an imperfect machine, but as long as Lamar Jackson's healthy and upright, 3 touchdown passes, 120 yards rushing, he's so special, and he kind of carried them to this win.
The Vikings have not lost by more than 1 score all year.
That's who they are.
If you look at so they have one game where they beat Seattle convincingly. Every other game has come down to the end, essentially. And they've had some of the most heartbreaking losses of the year, week after week. Even that week 1 Bengals game where it was like the fumble was overturned, then the Greg Joseph play. You lose to Cooper Rush last week. You lose this one after the big lead. Like, it's one after another.
Mike Zimmer, hot seat. Welcome to it. Sit on it.
All right, let us move on.
Hands off Benjamin off the left side of the 15. He trucks a DB and walks into the end zone for his first touchdown and maybe put this one out of reach.
Oh, yeah, Dave Pash with the call for KTAR. No Kyler Murray, no Nuke Hopkins, no problem for the Cardinals, who roll up over 400 yards of offense behind dudes like Colt McCoy. Yeah, Marky. James Conner and Eno Benjamin, who put the exclamation point on a 31-17 win by trucking Dre Kirkpatrick into Middle Earth. Let's now welcome in Nick Shook, who will help tell you why Arizona had so much success in a division road game where everything was stacked against them. Pipe?
Everything was stacked against them except for Colt McCoy. Completed 22 of 26 passes, and 20 of his completions were less than 10 air yards. You know what that means? I'm taking what the defense gives me, I'm dumping it off, and I'm letting the rest of my guys do the work.
An underrated strategy, honestly. An underrated strategy that more quarterbacks would do well for themselves to follow. Take what the defense gives you.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, right?
Yep.
It was simple on his screen pass to James Conner. It really kind of captured the state of the 49ers defense at this point, which is, let's make a tackle in the open field, guys. I mean, it was strange because he caught that screen pass, ran across the field, and I'm waiting for another defender appear from off screen into the picture, and it just never happened. He just sprinted his way to the end zone for a touchdown. That was basically the entire day for the 49ers defensively. Plenty of missed tackles, didn't do their job very well. Let Colt McCoy put up his best passer rating since his rookie season in the NFL when he was back with the Browns, as I'm sure Mark remembers so fondly. And it was the Cardinals essentially rolled to this victory. The 49ers didn't put up much of a fight. In fact, it wasn't as close as the final score even indicated. A depressing day, another depressing day at Levi's Stadium for the faithful.
Yeah, it's been terrible there. You know, Dan mentioned, in the office, does it feel like the Niners have no home field advantage? They keep getting wiped there. They've lost 11 of 12 home games. The Cardinals, I think, have won 6 of 7 against them in San Francisco. It's not even in San Francisco. It's like 40 minutes away in a windswept terrain in a lesser version of Candlestick Park. And Cliff Kingsbury is out coaching Kyle Shanahan. The Niners team, to me, looks as discombobulated as ever under Kyle Shanahan, and you cannot blame injuries. You cannot blame the lack of a starting quarterback. They've got 2 of them they think can be starters. They've given up the farm for their rookie, and they look completely lost to me. I think it's one of the more depressing developments around.
Well, it's not shocking to me that their defense, forces a couple turnovers. The Kittle fumble and the Ayuk fumble helped change this game. The 49ers moved the ball decently well. That doesn't shock me. Cardinals defense has been frisky all year. It shocks me that the 49ers defense couldn't hold up better in a game without Nuke. I mean, it's not just you're without Kyler Murray, you're without DeAndre Hopkins, and you're without A.J. Green. And I think it does point out to Mark's point, like, Kingsbury's done a great job coaching. His entire coaching staff has done well. And that the supporting players, specifically James Conner and Christian Kirk, have showed up before this game. Now, this was the game they needed to really, carry this offense, but they've been good all year, and I've been so impressed that this offense, like the breadth of the talent that they have, it's not just Kyler Murray.
Yeah, when they're fully healthy, you're amazed at the amount of talent that they have out there. But you're right, they were missing a lot today. So you thought maybe it'd be Rondale Moore's day to shine, right? Well, he only had 5 catches for 25 yards. He wasn't a huge factor in this game. It's the other guys, and that's really what points to what you have to be encouraged by when you look at a team is how do you weather the injuries? Because every team gets injuries, every team loses guys. How can you weather the storm and come out there and still play complete football? And they proved today. And I know it's the 49ers. I don't know really even what to think about the 49ers, but we can get to that in a second. It does prove to me, though, that this team is built for the long haul and bouncing back after a loss like they suffered on Thursday night against the Packers. I was extremely impressed with how well prepared they were, how they executed, and how they went on the road and made it look pretty easy.
And Connor finished with 173 yards from scrimmage. He leads the NFL in touchdowns with 11. If you got him into the mid to the late portion of your fantasy draft, congratulations on the money that's coming your way. He scored all those touchdowns in the past 7 games. And, yeah, I think it's like one of those things where you're on the road. It's a division game. San Francisco was coming off a big week where it looked like they might be ready to turn it around. I thought this was going to be a really good day for the 49ers. And the Cardinals' ability to win while also giving Kyler Murray the opportunity to rest the bad ankle, to let Nuke sit a full week now, get 2 weeks off with the hamstring. That could pay dividends. So you get, what do they call you have your cake and you eat it too. You got to rest the most important guys. Was that it?
Yeah, that's that's the cake.
Yeah.
That's what you do with the cake.
I think it's like from medieval times, like when
Right.
you know, yeah.
So that's what they did, Shook. They got to rest their guys. That's going to help them in the long term. And they got the W, and they kind of killed the 49ers now, who, by the way, they're 3-5. That's last place in the West, tied with Seattle. They're 0-4 at home. They kind of put a rival to bed potentially here.
Yeah, they even got to lick the frosting off the knife afterward. I mean, it was an experience where they had a great time. Everything's kind of going right for them, even with these injuries not playing in their favor, and it's encouraging. I mean, again, every time you think about these games, you have to think about matchup, and it's who they play, and at this point in the season, typically there are still a lot of question marks, but I just don't see a lot of bright spots for these 49ers going forward. Just the way that I know they've lost some guys, but the injury excuse does not hold up this year like it did last year, for example, or in previous years in the Jimmy Garoppolo era.
The NFC is weird because that 7 seed's going to be wide open for every mediocre team to be going after for a while. So 49ers aren't giving up on their season because they got 5 losses. Everyone in the NFC's got 4 or 5 losses, looking for that spot. But you are, 5 games behind the Cardinals. And you are in this lower region of the NFL, and you are getting more criticism if you're Kyle Shanahan than you ever have. I mean, he punted on 4th down from the Cardinals' 39-yard line while down 3 scores.
The fans
in the
put
fourth
down
quarter.
their wine and cheese to boo that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was. He also kicked a field goal down 17 inside the 10-yard line late, and Kyle Shanahan's always been conservative when it comes to decisions like that, surprisingly. But now you're going to notice it more because, this is just a losing team.
What a night for Colt McCoy.
And
Your boy, your son's namesake took out your wife's favorite team.
That's sort of a microcosm of our household on some level. So there you go.
If you guys have noticed so far, the listeners, Shook and Sessler are in great moods today. Colt McCoy stepping up, and after this break, you're going to really learn why these guys are floating. But I just want to share something with the audience here. You can't have your cake and eat it too is a popular English idiomatic proverb or figure of speech. Proverb literally means you cannot simultaneously retain your cake and eat it. Once the cake is eaten, it is gone. It can be used to say that one cannot have 2 incompatible things, or that one should not try to have more than is reasonable. Well, guess what? The Cardinals got it all on Sunday. We'll be right back.
And turns, gives, Chubb runs, 30, 35, there he goes, 40, 45, 50, there he goes, 40, he's running to the river, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Nick Chubb!
Is he in the river yet?
He's in the river!
He's in the river! Jim Donovan and Doug Deacon with a call, WKRK. Baker Mayfield threw 2 touchdown passes. Denzel Ward had a 99-yard pick 6. And Nick Chubb, that guy, iced the game with that long TD run. The Browns cap a crazy week by beating up on the Bengals in Cincy, 41-16. Mark, I don't know if the season ends well for the Browns, if it ends with a deep playoff run, if it ends with the playoffs at all, who knows. But I know I know they're not going to miss Odell Beckham.
No, and I think Browns fans have to be extremely proud with this performance, because I thought after what happened this week, about as messy a situation as you could imagine in Kevin Stefanski's era, because it's been real smooth otherwise. He has been the same guy throughout, Kevin Stefanski. This was a huge game for him. They've done an excellent job rebounding after tumultuous games, and this was another example coming off of a rough week where I thought the real stars of this team stepped up. And Odell Beckham was never a real star on this team. Nick Chubb, you mentioned it, but it was also a defense that's been real up or down this season. The best day they've had by the secondary, you mentioned Denzel Ward. Troy Hill, 3 sacks, the most sacks by a defensive back in Browns history in a game. Greg Newsome is becoming a star in that secondary. They did a great job on Jamar Chase, whether they were doubling him or having to take him out in one-on-one coverage at times. And they made life really difficult for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And on offense, at one point, they had 30 plays and 34 yards in the fourth quarter. It wasn't a typical Browns game where maybe you have long drives where you're just working on, getting the clock down in the fourth quarter. This was a big play offense today, along with the Denzel Ward 99-yard pick six. They had a 60-yard touchdown. Donovan Peoples-Jones had 2 big catches. And I thought that Baker stepped up, and did what he needed to do. And after the game, he refused to say anything negative about Odell. He refused to say.
Yeah, he said, we're moving on. They haven't spoken since, but he is moving on. And he also had this to say about the Browns' effort today.
We'll take wins any way we can get them. I came here to win. I've said it over and over again. That's why I was brought here, to change the culture, to help change the culture, and continue to contribute, towards that winning attitude. And our guys are bought in. They focused up and did their job, and that needs to be a week-to-week thing.
Shooky, I thought this was one of the biggest games in Baker's career because things had a chance to snowball after the Odell fiasco. And by delivering a big performance, by the whole offense thriving, it kind of, at least for 1 week, puts that to bed and makes people think, okay, maybe the Browns, that was the whole thing about the Odell situation. It never felt like a sinking ship. This is a talented team with a lot of upside, and this game was a nice reminder.
Yeah, you could have said this is Berea burning down to the foundation again, as it has so many times in the history of the Browns since they returned to the NFL, because it felt like that during the week. But it's a credit not only to Kevin Stefanski, but also to Andrew Berry for acting firmly in this whole situation and trying to keep the organization on a charted course forward, and then delivering on Sunday. And what it really was offensively, this was the Browns offense, not quite at its peak, but in its purest form, which is executing the offense according to the way it's designed. Baker going through his progressions, targeting and throwing to the open man accurately for most of the game, missed a couple passes, but operating within the offense instead of trying to feed the ball to one disgruntled receiver in Odell Beckham Jr. I look at their stats and I think Jarvis Landry had the most catches, and I didn't even really notice that he was out there because he didn't put up much statistically. But then if you look at the entire receiving corps, nobody really did other than Donovan Peoples-Jones' long touchdown pass, and that's by design. That's when the Browns are at their strongest offensively, is when they're balanced. They don't feed one guy. They don't rely on one guy, and then they give it to Nick Chubb to hammer it home. He ends up with over 130 yards, 70 that on one long touchdown run that kind of was the nail in the coffin of this game. It was a complete performance, their best performance this year without a doubt, and just a stunning response to the week that was. Because I can tell you, being in Cleveland,
listen to
the
these
feeling
Browns fans,
was,
I love it.
this is a disaster. We're coming toward a disaster. If they don't win, the wheels are going to completely fall off. It was almost like a funeral because of the departure of Odell and the division that it created among the fan base and the people here. So for them to come out and win, and not only just win, but win in dominant fashion, it says a lot about the organization, who they once were and who they're still trying to become.
Right, and win in Cincinnati, where they thought they were going to be the fun, rising, 2020 Browns type team, and they're sitting here looking at a 41-16 loss, and they're thinking, what can we do to get Jamar Chase unlocked? Jamar Chase and the targets thrown to him, to me, have been one of the big reasons why they've lost these last 2 games. They talked after the Jets game about, the way the Jets played them. Jamar Chase last week really created a lot of problems. They basically sold out to stop Jamar Chase going deep. They've thrown it to him 22 times in the last 2 games for 64 yards. That can't be right. But not for 49 yards this game and 30 before. They've been extremely efficient, and they haven't had the other guys step up enough. And the defense, which felt like it was that getting by on grit and hustle and energy and cohesion for the first 6-7 weeks of the season hasn't really come through.
I think teams are there's much more attention being put on Chase, obviously, and that was the case today early. And Cleveland's secondary, which has been, quietly very banged up all season long, had a lot of guys back today, and you kind of saw what we talked about all offseason because John Johnson made big plays. This is the defense that you thought you were getting.
With 7 minutes to go last Sunday, the Bengals were 5-2 and looking like they were going to stay on top of the AFC. Since the last 7 minutes of last Sunday and then 4 quarters today, they've been outscored 55-16. So something's going wrong, and the Zach Taylor celebration and the Captain Lou Albano celebration, well, they got to get something fixed real quick or this season is going to go down the drain. Let's move on to the Meadowlands.
He takes the snap. He's back. He's looking left the whole way. He throws it left, and it's intercepted by the Giants. McKinney down the right sideline. 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Giants. Xavier McKinney with his first career pick six.
Bisaccia bump? More like Bisaccia banged. Bob Papa with the call. For KWAFAN, Xavier McKinney return, because he was banged.
No, I hear you. It makes... Proceed.
You guys are an incredible audience.
Proceed.
Returned an interception, 41 yards for a touchdown early in the second half and picked off another errant throw by Derek Carr late as the Giants picked up a 23-16 win over the Raiders. Shooky, the Giants put together another strong defensive effort, and this time they're rewarded with a win.
Yeah, this is probably the third straight game, and even though they lost to the Chiefs the prior week, that they really played well defensively. This time, though, they came through in the clutch. Whether it was the Xavier McKinney pick six, the Xavier McKinney pick late on a terrible pass. Both of them were terrible passes by Derek Carr, or just getting after Derek Carr, capped off with a strip sack to basically end the game. I think it was Quincy Roche was the person who recorded the sack there to really just put a capper on quite a performance for them. They didn't really need to do that much offensively. They're still kind of the same Giants offensively, but because the defense kept them in the game and they converted their own field goal opportunities, and Daniel Carlson missed a field goal, and most importantly, they stood tall in the red zone. The Raiders were 1 for 6 in red zone opportunities and 1 for 2 in goal-to-go situations today. The Raiders did not convert. You could say, hey, what's wrong with the Raiders and everything else, but you also got to give a ton of credit to the Giants and the way that they're playing defense. That front starting to get after quarterbacks. The back end not playing too shabby either, and they come away with a win that, MetLife was rocking today. I think they were stunned by the end. I can't believe we actually pulled this off. They were waiting for everything to come crashing down, and it didn't, and it's a good one for Joe Judge's bunch.
That's after a couple games at MetLife where you could audibly hear the crowd, their hideous displeasure with this Giants team. I feel like, going back to even last season, though, one of the better coordinator hires has been Patrick Graham. He's done a nice job, and this Giants defense last year, I think, was 9th in points allowed. They've been up and down this year to some degree, but this was more of a signature win, the way that you'd want a Giants win to be on defense.
This is the first game. Go ahead, Shook.
No, go ahead, Dan. All you.
I was just going to say this is the first game for Vegas since the Henry Ruggs tragedy, where a woman's life was taken in a car crash in Vegas, and the Raiders perhaps, coming off that and in tune with the struggles to score points today. It was reported by Mike Garafolo that Deshaun Jackson is expected to sign with the team. He'll receive more than the veteran minimum in his contract, so they make a move to try to replace Ruggs on the roster and add a little juice to that offense.
Yeah, and it's going to help them a lot because they flat out missed that element today. They just did. They couldn't push the ball down the field. I know Carr finishes close to 300 yards passing, but it was quite an exercise to get there, and it certainly showed when they needed it late. They just didn't have the same firepower that they've had in previous weeks. It kind of reminded me of that game they played against the Bears, where you just wondered, where are the Raiders? Did they forget to bring their ability to play football at home? This is kind of what happened to them again today. So we'll see how quickly Djax fits into the offense and everything else. But the fact that you have a threat to take the top off, even at his age, should help them at least offensively more than they were today. And Josh Jacobs had a decent day statistically, but they just lacked a presence with the ball. And above all, they lacked the ability to execute when it mattered most.
Right. If Carr turns over the ball 3 times, they're going to lose. They outgained it by 150 yards. Daniel Jones gets 110 yards passing and another lost fumble to the ledger. and they managed to get a win. It almost feels like karma coming back for the Giants because I feel like they've played well in a lot of losses, and so you get an ugly win. And spoiler alert, I know we haven't gotten to the entire AFC West, but they're all flawed. They all have 5 wins. Like I don't think any of them should be that disappointed where they are in the season right now in terms of the Raiders being 5-3. It's like these are all teams that are going to be competitive. They're going to get, none of them are going to dominate the AFC, and it's totally wide open.
After everything that's happened with the Raiders in just half a season, from Gruden and now Ruggs, they're a hard team to get a beat on. Can you rule out them again tumbling out of this race? You can't. Can you see them sticking around? Yes, you can, because Derek Carr's been so much better this year. But one thing they will always be sure of when you're trying to study what's going on with the Raiders, they will stink after the bye week. They are now 3-16 after a week off over the last 19 years. I don't know doesn't matter who the coach is or the roster is. The Raiders stink after a bye.
And they have the Chiefs and Bengals up next. 2 other teams we're trying to figure out. So
yes,
good luck to you.
I would say 2 weeks ago we would have said that's a brutal slog ahead. Now we say, okay, those are winnable games. Shook, we win because of you, good man. Thank you for joining us, you hero. And enjoy the night, 'cause I know Colt McCoy stepping up, the Brownies delivering a big performance. It's going to be a party in the gym tonight.
Two things. Colt McCoy has earned Cleveland's respect forever for trying to gut out that Thursday night game in which James Harrison knocked his lights out. And then he re-entered the game, and he almost got hit like that again today. I was sitting there going, oh, God, he almost got his lights knocked out again. And the other thing is, Dan, as crazy as that 3-16 stat in the last 19 years is, I got one stat that's worse for you off the top of my head.
Let's hear it.
The Browns' home opener record. It's terrible.
Oh, it's absurd.
Or the Browns' week 1 record.
It's such a terrible Browns fan thing. Why are you bringing that up today?
Right.
Just enjoy
it's not your time.
Be a good week 1 nugget, though. Next week 1, you should bring that up, please.
It's like Chris Rose, who works here.
Oh, that was a tough
we
situation
see him.
Today.
Comes by our desk, on the way to hosting a show. He's a fellow Browns fan with Mark. He's like, hey, what do you think about the game, Mark? He was like, oh, you wanted to commiserate, talk some Browns. And
narratives.
Mark's like, I don't think
that is not,
he
again,
didn't match the enthusiasm at all. In fact, he threw a big wet blanket on it.
Shook, you know that this is just simply a narrative. I was
exactly what happened.
I was engaged in something else. What do you want me to dance around the office? I was engaged in something else, and I told him, I said, I don't know if I trust this team, but it's sort of what Dan just said. This was a signature win for Kevin Stefanski, is what I said to him.
Well, you said the team isn't very good also. And then Chris Rose's lights got turned.
No, on top of it, Chris Rose and I, we'll DM about the Browns here and there, so I know that we'll pick up the conversation. I was engaged in something else that I needed to handle.
Chris Rose learned
time-sensitive nature.
He learned his lesson.
There's one rule.
Yes.
There's one rule about Sessler and excitement. If you want to get excitement from Sessler in the office, he's got to come to you.
Thank you. You understand me. You understand my nature.
Thank you, Shook. Let's move on. He's got to come to you. That's an interesting take.
That's an excellent take is what it is, and I'm not surprised.
Don't go to Mark.
To the left, Bridgewater, deep drop, sets home run ball left side. He wants Patrick. Patrick is there, makes the catch, and Denver with another touchdown. 34 yards.
Whoa, Dave Logan. KOA with the call. Teddy Bridgewater threw for a touchdown. Had a QB sneak score as well. And the Broncos. All right, this is when, again, football's tough to figure out. Broncos shut down the NFL's top offense. A 30-16 win, ending the Cowboys' 6-game winning streak. And forget that final score. That was garbage time theatrics. Lipstick on the old hog. Because this game was 30-zip in the second half. Greg, the NFL has a way of humbling us all when we think we know too much. Here was an example.
Well, unless what you know is that Teddy Bridgewater is going to give it his all, in a tough spot. That I know. No, I am
back in now.
I'm kidding. I haven't been more surprised by a result this season. I'm totally joking. On defense.
Wait till the next game.
Right. Defensively, especially. I've been on the corner. I think their offense has been efficient enough. And that Teddy's been good enough. He's been about as good as they could have hoped for.
He's fine.
Right.
That's always been the conversation.
Right. And I think their offense has been fine. I expected it to be a top 5 defense. When they've been a bottom 5 or 7 defense all year, I've been totally confused. And yet for the first, I think, 6 drives of this game, the Cowboys had 4 first downs. At one point, it was 390 something in yardage to 120. Like, this was just a total domination, mostly by the Broncos offense. In terms of the Cowboys offensively, it was a lot of mistakes. It was some drops on third downs. It was some curious play calling, going for it on fourth down, but then throwing the ball. One time it got tipped. One time it was a strange play call, and Dak just missed an open CeeDee Lamb down the field. Another time it was a drop. So it was like everything that could go wrong for the Cowboys did go wrong. I know they didn't have their left tackle, Tyron Smith, but I just didn't think that the Broncos had this kind of game in them.
Yeah.
There was no evidence of that.
Right. They have Jerry Jeudy back, and he looked, to me, better than he did a week ago in his first game back from injury, and he makes a big difference. Teddy was absolutely on point and made some great throws, but they were missing a lot of people, too. They were missing Garrett Bowles, their left tackle. They were missing Noah Fant.
Von Miller.
Not even healthy. Right. They were missing their best pass rusher, Malik Reed, not just Von Miller. And yet they came out here, and they had Vic Fangio feeling like ultra confident. Ricky, they asked. It was just a classic Vic Fangio press conference answer after the game.
Can't wait.
It's going to be a treat.
That I really, really enjoyed.
Your corners had to play some one-on-one coverage. What do you think of how they matched up with their receivers?
Well, for 56 minutes, it was a goose egg. You can answer that question.
We got to keep Fangio in a big chair. We can't lose him. I like Vic.
Some Broncos fans might disagree with you, but
he was on the
fair enough.
sideline celebrating like he was loving this. His guys, Kyle Fuller, his cornerback who we brought in, had a great game. He gave him a game ball, like all the secondary players. I really think the game plan worked well. And when they suggested that to Dak Prescott, that they kind of confused Dallas, he was like, I hope someone runs that game plan every week against us. He was defensive.
Yeah, you look at the Cowboys. On offense, at least, it's all about, those big names. And I look at the big names. Dak, 19 of 39.
At one point, 8 of 24 for 102. And that was mid-fourth quarter. These two garbage time things changed.
Yeah,
75 yards in the first half.
Yeah, even with the garbage time touchdowns to Malik Turner, by the way, so that didn't even help anybody's fantasy team. He still averaged less than 6 yards per attempt. Zeke, I guess, Greg, you could tell me, got game scripted out of this, 10 for 51. And then you look at CeeDee Lamb. 2 for 23 on 9 targets. Cooper, 2 for 37 on 5 targets. Whatever Denver did, and this reminds me of a few weeks ago when the Chargers got shut down, and you thought to yourself, does that give the rest of the league some tape to study? I mean, every team in the NFC is studying this game tape and seeing if they could do something to flummox the Cowboys the way they got flummoxed tonight.
Yeah, except here's what I'm going to do. Take nothing out of it. While I think it's something that you could say we've waited for this from Denver, this is what some of the games we thought we'd get. There's no evidence to suggest this is, a team that found a way to unspool the Cowboys, and it's going to happen week after week. Dallas will bounce back. Denver will revert to what they were before.
Probably, but at the same time,
I'm just saying I'm protecting myself from getting swept up in narrative tornadoes all week long.
Denver's defense has played better for 2 weeks, so I think it's possible.
They played well against Washington.
That Fangio's defense can at least settle down and be okay, and another 5-win AFC team. If Pittsburgh wins on Monday night, 9 teams in the AFC will have 5 wins.
I'm with
crazy.
Mark. I'm with you on the Broncos. It doesn't change much about how I feel. I still see them as a 500 team around there. The Cowboys, the only thing it does tell me is they are capable of a stink or two, and it's also coming off last Sunday night, Halloween night, when we all got super pumped up and excited. It's like, wow, even with Dak Prescott out, they are such a well-built team that you could plug in a Cooper Rush and they're going to deliver a big performance on the road. So to lay a stinker like this, 30-zip in the fourth quarter at home, makes you think, okay, the Cowboys maybe have not built a perfect machine. Maybe they're capable of disappointing and coming up small at some point. It's a little,
It is. I would say Denver had 41 minutes of time of possession, which I think it was like 16 years since they've had that. I mean, so if the next team has the ball for 41 minutes against Dallas, your fortunes will be nice.
It was a bit of a ball rolling down the hill type of game where Denver's offense took such control early, putting up 17 points in the span of 3 drives, where Dallas was making mistakes that suddenly it's like Dallas got totally out of their game plan and didn't know what.
And Chris Rose, by the way, did predict that Javonte Williams will win Kyle Brandt's Angry Runs Award, and I think he's right. Watching a couple of
is this your way of trying to make it up to Chris Rose?
By the way, because you know what? I don't know why this is the between the two of you. Every episode, you try to get me into hot water with some other media figure inside the building.
It was just a good story.
And
from
anyone,
the day.
and
like
anyone,
to hear the behind the scenes.
Anyone armed with logic knows that it is nonsense.
You're asking us if you ice out Chris Rose right in front of us for us not.
It was not an ice out. If anything, it's like we talk now. We'll talk a couple times other during the week. He's a friend, and I am insulted by your insinuations.
Like an ice out as more of just like a disappointment for him. It was like, hey, bro. It was like he went for a big high five.
He was also far from our cubes. I'm not going to get into it. There's a whole if you were there, I think you would think. Maybe Mark has a point here.
I am glad you brought up Javonte Williams. Quick, just that this was. I think Vic loved this game so much because they finally ran the ball, 190 yards on the ground. I think Williams and Melvin Gordon are a very good tandem. There is a chance that this offense could be decent down the stretch. That's all.
All right.
That's all.
Let's take a break and then get into even more shocking outcome.
With 7 seconds left, there's the snap. One step gets it off. Nobody back for Buffalo. The ball is going to hit. And bounce, and the clock's going to run, and the clock's going to run out, and Jacksonville has defeated the Buffalo Bills 9-6, the first actual home win for Urban Meyer, actual home win for Trevor Lawrence in this stadium. Jacksonville wins it 9-6 over perhaps the best team in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills.
Calls for bongos. Calls for bongos. Frank Frangie, WOKV. You know why it calls for bongos? You know what that was?
What?
Walk-off punt, bitches. Josh Allen stepped up with a huge performance in the Bills game today. But it wasn't the Josh Allen you expected. The Jaguars star linebacker intercepted a pass, registered a sack, recovered a fumble, and the Jags get the big stop at the end of the game, a 9-6 upset of the Bills, the class of the AFC, or so we've been led to believe. Mark, what happened here?
It's more evidence of a totally bizarro Sunday. This was one where I was covering this thinking, the Bills are somehow going to score 38 points. They're just getting off to a very slow start. They never warmed up. This was a game where the Jacksonville Jaguars on offense had a killer scenario where Matthew Wright, their field goal kicker, decided not to be a field goal kicker and missed 2 of them on one drive. Trevor Lawrence left the game with an ankle injury that looked pretty grisly, but then returned. Both teams had 132 yards at the half, and I think the Bills banged up on the offensive line. Spencer Brown was out. John Feliciano was out. They lost Zach Moss. And, whether those were the reasons or whether Jacksonville's defense finally just shined, they put it on to the Josh Allen on the Buffalo side. And it was Jacksonville's Josh Allen who, it's not this game. He had 10.5 sacks last year. He is a star. Like you said, he totally showed up and dominated this game. It was Dwayne Smoot as well. They just put Buffalo into a place. We've seen this when they played Pittsburgh, and you thought, well, it's the Steelers. This came out of left field, and I cannot find a way to explain this other than the fact that maybe the Jaguars are slightly growing. But I'm not going to do that either because we just said we're not doing that with the Broncos.
They were terrible last week in Seattle.
It's the NFL.
The Seattle game especially, it makes no sense looking at what happened today. Maybe these teams that we're putting up in the top 3, 4, 5 in the league, you have to give them a mulligan.
What's the AFC? What is AFC right now?
It is an LSD soup. We don't know. Nothing makes sense.
If Buffalo, the team that we've all pumped up as the favorite in this conference, is capable of a game like this, and, closer inspection, and I know what DVOA says, and I know what this says and what that says, the Bills are having a little bit of a weird season in some ways, and they, at 5-3, all of a sudden they have a 1-game lead in their division. The Patriots are hot, and they're right on their heels. And, Greg, again, same thing like with the Cowboys. If you can lose this game, you could get beat any week. They're kind of their armor takes a hit here.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, to lose to the Jaguars is crazy. I think what you can say about the Bills that's more than just a reaction to one game is that their offense is not as explosive and not as effective as it was a year ago.
Not even close.
Right. it's a good offense. It's, if you look at DVOA or EPA or whatever, it's an above average offense, but it's not a top 10 offense. And that was what you expected. We've seen these stretches, even in the good Josh Allen games, like a week ago, where they go cold for a while, where they go cold for a half at a time. You expected them to come out of it today because they're going against a defense that's basically last in every ranking, but they didn't. And I'm flummoxed. I'm sure you were.
And
I am flummoxed.
I picked this because I thought it was going to be an easy-to-watch blowout, and instead it's, it was this.
That tends to happen as well in our league. And I kind of joked about it entering this the week. Stephon Diggs. Was there a more sure bet in fantasy circles entering this year? Go grab Stephon Diggs and never worry again about that position as long as he stays healthy. And I think that's a big part of what's missing with this offense. It's not that simple. But every time they needed a big play last year, Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs, they were always there for each other. And it's just been, and I know his numbers don't look terrible, 6 for 85, but I think some of that came late. Mark, you could maybe shine a light on that.
Completely.
He's just not the same game-changing presence on that offense. Maybe there's an injury involved. Maybe it's defenses adjusting after an offseason of tape, but there's something off there.
Well, but Beasley gets 11 targets for 33 yards in this game. I mean, they have faced a lot of what the Chiefs have faced in terms of the defensive scheme they're going against. I'm not like Brandon Staley here, like cracking down the X's and O's, but when you watch the Bills and you watch the Chiefs, generally teams are playing the Bills kind of like the Chiefs, which is with the two safeties back and daring them to run. And similarly to the Chiefs, the quarterback is now having a lot of short completions. Josh Allen's YPA is going way down. He's throwing a lot of passes that aren't getting a lot of yards, and they're still refusing to run. They ran 9 times. Their running backs ran 9 times today for 22 yards, so that hasn't been able to get unlocked for them. And it's a fairly similar problem that Buffalo and Kansas City are.
They also had 12 penalties, and I know that we kind of penalties don't get discussed much, but they were just simply not disciplined today. And Sean McDermott brought that up. He was like, We didn't have our act together on that front, and they were killing themselves here and there. That said, Jacksonville was 2 for 13 on third down.
All right,
There's no excuses to lose this.
Yards. I mean, I'm waiting for Mark to finally start crowing about the whole Josh Allen on Josh Allen thing. He got a lot of grief for that.
Dan is very down on it, saying I think only uninteresting people are into this. Well, I thought it took over the day a little bit because it wasn't just.
He was ahead of the story, at least. He was ahead of the story.
Well, it's a non-story.
It is a story because I think he was the much better Josh Allen today, which very few people would have thought that would have been the case.
But that wasn't your analysis.
No, but you got to be
fair. He's a wonderful player.
You said that for this to come through, that he needs to make like a big-time play, like a sack or a forced fumble. Yeah, you said for it to really matter, Josh Allen actually has to sack. Not only did he sack him, but he got an interception, and he got a fumble recovery.
He kept topping himself.
He's literally never had an interception or a fumble recovery in his life, and he had both of them. Josh Allen on Josh.
They did ask him after the game, like, do you, the typical reporter question, like, hey, when you have grandkids, are you going to tell them that Josh Allen sacked Josh Allen, and will that be confusing to a grandkid? And he's like, I honestly have not thought that far ahead on this story, which is a very fair response.
I guess I lost.
You were disinterested. You're allowed to be, but coming a little hard.
For the people that were obsessing with the idea that there could be 2 Josh Allens on 2 different teams in the NFL, I say there's so much more in this world. Seek it out. Seek out wonder.
I know, but you tweeted at me. Go seek wonderment. It's by the way, I'm pretty good at doing that in my own life.
I replied to you.
Yeah.
Your tweet. Listen, Mark. You're the king of the subtweet. We all know it.
Of course.
Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen. Don't care if you like it or not. Now, who was that directed toward?
Oh, that was not that was absolutely.
Put a name on it.
That was absolutely directed at you because you did not at me at this, and I'm gonna find this before we hold on here. So many tweets from you today. Please hold on. I got to cycle down through 4,000 Sam Darnold tweets. But
I'm doing my job. That's how it works.
I will find it at some point. I can't even find it.
I don't know how this could have gone any better. Is what I'm saying. This was literally the best game of Josh Allen's career. The Jaguars.
Right. I agree. I'm not sure what it means.
In a big spot.
But I guess I lost.
Mark put the heat on him, and he came through.
It's like he showed up at the most perfect time to do
You're
everything.
Still scrolling. What, you can't? What is it? What are you looking for?
I don't know.
Can we move on? And when Mark finds it, he can rejoin us.
Ryan's going to hang it downfield for Patterson, who makes the catch. Cordero stays in bounds. 20, knocked out of bounds at the 15-yard line. Holy smokes. Matt Ryan looped one down the far sideline, and Cordero Patterson comes through again.
What? Did you find it?
Yeah.
What is it?
You want to talk about a subtweet? First of all, like, this is someone else that just a nice person, Andy S3863, trying to get you engaged and have some fun with you about the Josh Allen scenario. And your response was, in all capitals, like an old school headline, boring facts for uninteresting people, which I was like, you're calling me uninteresting because I've already brought this up as...
I didn't subtweet you.
Yes, you did.
I was replying to that guy.
Well, you are not.
And you were on the tweet, so actually,
it is a version of a subtweet. So I don't need to like say, "Hey, Dan Hansis, here's my thought on the matter." You know what I'm coming at.
There are two Josh Allens. You win. Matt Ryan hit Cordero Patterson for a 64-yard gain with just a minute to play, setting up the man, the machine. We saw him up close in London, Younghoe Koo, who drilled a 29-yarder as time expires. The Falcons beat the Saints 27-25. This one hurt Rosenthal. Greg, in a game between two bitter rivals, the Falcons dealt New Orleans a painful setback in the first game of the post-Jameis era.
If you're looking for a Game Pass watch, I recommend this one.
Oh, okay.
I know it took a little while to warm up, but it was good, dumb, fourth quarter fun for the whole family. I mean, the Saints scored 24 points in the fourth quarter. To make this interesting. The Falcons, who have been outscored by 45 in the fourth quarter, like almost collapsed again. But when it came down to it, Matt Ryan looks over to his right. He sees Cordero Patterson. He sees him matched up on Paulson Adebo, a rookie corner. And that's like basically a running back. Mm-hmm. And you would think like, okay, that's not a bad matchup for the Saints. Patterson kind of fakes inside a little, gets outside, and Ryan hit him with a perfect pass. And it was almost a mirror play of the first drive of the game, where Ryan also saw one-on-one coverage of Patterson on the outside. That time he was on a linebacker. Quan Alexander hit him for a nice gain that ended up setting up a field goal. And it's just like Cordero Patterson's season. If he's not running, which he didn't today very well, he's catching 6 for 126. He really was the difference in that moment, or the Falcons would have had one of their ghastliest losses since 28-3. I feel good for them that they avoided that.
Yeah, and Cordero, I mean, this is the guy that people have been trying to unlock for years. So I think we've had some like good-natured conversations about where we're at on Arthur Smith and the state of the offense of the Falcons this season. I mean, the one thing that cannot be debated, being able to turn Patterson into a legitimate weapon, whether it's the pass, because you said he's technically a running back. I still don't really see him that way. His size and his build.
He's like lining up as a running back.
So when he lines up outside, he doesn't seem like he's out of place in that position. He's just a versatile, great player, and it's kind of amazing it's taken this long for someone to figure him out and use him in this way.
It also was a terrible defensive play by Adebo, who our friends at the Saints Twitter podcast calls "Don't Vax Me, Bro." It was a bad week for unvaccinated players because Adebo wears the goat horns here, ruining what was a truly ridiculous comeback by Trevor Siemian and the Saints. The score was 24-6 with 10 minutes to go, and the Saints offense had not shown a ton of life in this game, and they go touchdown, with their defense also complying and getting the ball back quickly at a moment where you kind of thought they were going to go to Taysom Hill for good, because Trevor Siemian was struggling. Taysom Hill came in, made a couple plays, and then Trevor Siemian turned the ball over. But Sean Payton actually stuck with Siemian, and he led them all the way back. And if it wasn't for a Falcons injured player on a running play that ended up causing a timeout, I don't know if they would have had enough time, because I don't know if they were going to use that timeout, but it gave Matt Ryan enough time to get the game winner.
The Falcons, you're 4-4. You're one game behind the Saints. You've just beaten them. This team looked awful early in the year. I do believe in their offense. I just think that it's all going to happen this season, but Matt Ryan has acclimated pretty well, and
he had a great game.
Right?
He really played well today.
But this is Greg's dream because this is his NFC South,
I tell you, it's the best rivalry
in
the NFL. I did want the Saints to win, but Mark can tell you I was enjoying
He's feeling himself.
And even at the end of the game, it still was fun.
Yeah, that's a big win for the Falcons and the Saints. I guess it's a good if you're looking for, Greg, the plus side is that Trevor Siemian has that in him to go stack some points and get him back in the game, because I don't think we'd even seen any evidence of that until this point, really. But otherwise, that's a tough loss for the Saints at home.
It's a tough. I mean, I just think it's hard to count on your defense to just shut teams down week after week. And I know they've got a pretty good defense, but when you said like you believe in this Falcons offense, I do if they're playing a team that doesn't rush the passer naturally that well. And I'd have to throw the Saints in that category. Like, ultimately, they're good defense, but they're not good winning one-on-one matchups up front, and so that gave Matt Ryan enough time.
That said, I thought, 3 days ago that we looked at the Panthers-Falcons game, and we looked at the Saints defense and thought they're going to have a field day against Atlanta, and it just there is nothing that seems predictable.
I mean, with their quarterback situation, though, the Saints, it's hard to.
But they put up 25. It's like they didn't put up 10 points.
I'm just saying the idea that they were going to light up the Falcons, they need to prove that they can move the ball.
I meant more their defense shutting down the Falcons, and that did not happen. And it tells me that Arthur Smith, that they hired him for this, and you're starting to see it.
It's a tricky spot for the Saints here. They're 5-3, and we'll get into it more later in the week. But they have 2 road games coming up next: Tennessee, Eagles, then home against Bills and Cowboys. So. Yeah, it's not going to be an easy path. I still like their chances in that conference to get a playoff spot, but it's going to be tough.
And if you want to watch the Game Pass, I mean, you could kind of skip the 3-0 first 27 minutes.
That's
time.
great.
Like if you really want.
Good tip.
But honestly, there was some fun plays in there too.
All right, let us now move on and check in on another NFC South team. This one at home. Welcome in the hooded one.
Play fake to Hubbard. Bootleg to the near side for Donald. Under pressure. Tosses the ball. Intercepted by J.C. Jackson. Goodbye. To the 40. To the 50. Down the middle of the field to the 40. To the 30. To the 20. He is end zone bound. Pick 6. Touchdown. Patriots.
Bob Sochi with the call. WBZ. Zolak in there as well. That was the human Gatorade you heard. Mac Jones overcame 2 early turnovers. He threw for $139 and a touchdown, but it didn't have to be about Mac Jones because J.C. Jackson returned one of 3 Sam Darnold interceptions for 88 yards and a score. Pats roll 24-6 over the Panthers. It's 4 wins in 5 weeks, 5 games for the Patriots. Let's start here with New England, and there's a lot to break down on the other side, but we're seeing it again with the Patriots. This always felt this way. I locked up the Patriots because it just felt like such a good spot for them that Bill Belichick was going to have this defense ready for Sam Darnold, and that's exactly how it played out. Even with Christian McCaffrey back, the Panthers' offense is completely broken. You don't have there's no semblance of a passing game anymore. And you remember in September when they were going up and down the field, and DJ Moore was involved, and Robbie Anderson was making plays, and it just seemed like this was going to work. These guys aren't even on the field, it feels like. The only time you saw Robbie Anderson in this game was when he was screaming at Sam Darnold after another interception. And Bill Belichick has Darnold's number, and that's how this game got ugly. Darnold did not let the Panthers be competitive here.
It's been too many games where he doesn't. And I'm sure they did some things defensively, but, I watched the interceptions, and there's nothing confusing going on there. It's just man coverage.
He's skittish.
Man coverage and kind of showing it before the snap and him making bad decisions and bad throws.
Darnold's skittish in the pocket. He's indecisive, and his confidence is low. And I understand, and you're going to see it this week, and there's going to be talk about it. And Robbie Anderson said after the game, this is a brotherhood. And I was getting on him because, he needed to tighten it up. I think that's what he said on the field when he was screaming at Darnold. But sometimes that type of thing is not going to work when Darnold is dejected. You could tell he's in a bad mental place. And I was a little surprised that P.J. Walker wasn't in this game because you could tell Darnold was in that headspace that we saw with the Jets a few times, that we've seen earlier this season, where it's just going to keep going downhill. And I just don't know what the Panthers are doing going forward. They're in a tough spot now because he's in a really bad place mentally, Darnold. He's not moving this offense. So you wonder if he's gonna have to make a move, Matt Rule, to keep this locker room. I could see that being a situation now.
I think so. I mean, I thought this was a good spot for the Carolina Panthers, who wanted to be, not unlike New England, a team that was going to dominate with the run and kind of keep Sam Darnold out of the mix. The opposite happened today. Like, they were completely shut down, and Rule was outclassed by Bill Belichick. And, it shows you, because the assessment was, we had Teddy Bridgewater, but if they wanted other quarterbacks, but you didn't draft Mac Jones, who Matt Rule spent all week saying, well, I knew Mac Jones was going to be really good in the pros. And you basically said, we'll take Sam Darnold over Teddy Bridgewater going into this season. And it's sort of an example and a picture of how sideways your campaign will go when the quarterback implodes. And Sam Darnold, at some point, will be benched here. It could even be this week, and he'll never be a starter again.
Whoa.
Well, how would you, and outside of a pinch spot, how would you justify starting him, right?
I think you're right. I think if he wasn't drafted as high and there weren't that many people in the league that believed him in the first place, he probably wouldn't have gotten this long of a run the second time around. That said, I don't think they went to P.J. Walker in this game, possibly because the next time they go to Walker, it's going to be for an extended period. Maybe he just wasn't ready for that, and maybe he will be on Tuesday. And based on his answers in the post-game press conference, he certainly wasn't committing to Darnold for next week. But I think the next time you see P.J. Walker, it's not going to just be for a quarter. It'll be for multiple.
The body language on the sideline, it was all there. That at one point, Darnold is off by himself on the bench, and I think Robbie Anderson and maybe another skill player was sitting next to Walker on the bench, and they were commiserating. And it's tough to see as a Jets fan who really wanted Darnold to be a thing, and you thought he had a fresh start here, and things started so well in Carolina. This is the nadir of his career, and I think it's fitting that it's Belichick who's behind it because he is now, I think he's been intercepted 9 times and thrown 1 touchdown pass in 4 career games against Bill Belichick.
J.C. Jackson is making himself some money. It's like
a player.
I hear Patriots people covering them or fans being like, "Oh, he's not Gilmore." Oh, who cares? I mean, Gilmore was a defensive player of the year. This guy is playing at a Pro Bowl level. I don't know if they're going to pay him enough to keep him. He is going to be one of those free agents that just makes
Gilmore had another good game, by the way.
Right.
He did. He had another.
It'd be nice
pick.
to have Gilmore and J.C. Jackson. Imagine that.
That would have been very special. And a reminder, if it hasn't already been said, that yes, the Panthers also picked up the 5th-year rookie option on Sam Darnold. They've made some terrible mistakes in the last 2 years.
Your Pats, though, improving every week.
They are. They're my team.
Resourceful.
They're the team of Zeus TL, the Patriots.
Stop. What is happening?
And they are making a push
Pats
for
Browns next
January
week.
football. That's a big matchup. All right, let's take a break and then take it home.
Dustin Hopkins, in just his second game with the Chargers, will attempt a 29-yard field goal with 5 seconds left for the lead at the uprights to our left. Snap back, ball down, right-footed kick, clears the line. It is good! 2 seconds on the clock. The Chargers take the lead.
Isaac Lowercron, KYSR, missing Matt Money Smith. Justin Herbert threw 2 touchdown passes and ran for a score, and Dustin Hopkins kicked that 29-yard field goal with 2 seconds to play, leading the Chargers to a 27-24 win over the Eagles. Mark, this is a big win for the Chargers on the road, across the country, with a big performance from their young quarterback who had been struggling.
Yeah, it was 2 teams I thought that came in wanting to attack things completely differently. I mean, the Chargers had 8 drives in this game, and so did the Eagles, because the Eagles came out not unlike what we saw against Detroit when they basically metamorphosized into something completely different, ran the ball 39 times for 176 yards. Jalen Hurts had a couple big runs down the stretch in this. This game got better and better and more exciting and more alluring as it went on. I mean, it was a bit sleepy early, and they held Justin Herbert to 3 drives in the first half. Herbert, on the flip side, they kind of said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to be obedient. We're going to let you show short passes, and you'll as you say, Dan, you'll take what we give you.
That's Mark's kind of game, like a quarterback being told to be obedient.
He was, he had 38 passes and only 6 incompletions, but he kind of said, I'm going to be disobedient, and he did throw a couple deep strikes to Mike Williams, and it worked. And Justin Herbert, I thought, played a really good game. It didn't, for me, Philadelphia, Greg, you've argued that they can get back into this. 3-6, they're in a tough spot.
They needed to win this.
They needed to win this. This was an ugly loss, but Jalen Hurts does show you something every game, and it wasn't just garbage time today. I think Darius Slay getting injured down the stretch for Philadelphia really hurt them a ton. I mean, that was when Los Angeles started to pick up a ton of steam. And early on, I'll just say one last thing, that the Chargers had a drive end on Philly's 2-yard line, and then another stopped on 4th and 2 from Philly's 27 because of their go for it on 4th down thing. And there was some squawking, and I think it's fair sometimes to say, if you're going to go for it on 4th down this much, come up with plays that work, because they showed that they were.
That's the hard part.
Well, I know that sounds simple, but it's like they were 2 for 7, and they're just leaving points on the board. Yet, what happened was they came back and went for it again on 4th and 1 in the 4th quarter, and then 4th and inches, Herbert had a sneak basically that sealed the game, because they would have had to go for a field goal with 1:45 left or something.
If they didn't get that, the Eagles probably win this game.
That's what I'm saying, the way that both teams were driving. So in the end, Staley's aggressiveness that he is relentless with, I give it a win, because it's how they won this game. But early on, it's like when they were 2 and 7, it was like one of their plays was Josh Kelly on a run that just looked like you could have designed something better here. And teams are now keeping the right personnel on the field to deal with 4th downs. They're expecting this to happen. It's a little bit different than a month ago.
I get
but they
it,
adjusted.
but I think it's knowing what your team is, and what your team is on defense is a team that can't get off the field even against Jalen Hurts. So
right,
I
especially
get it.
the run
I get
defense.
it. They're going to get praised when it goes well, and they're going to get criticism when it goes poorly. And they started so well this year that it was almost destined to come
I almost
down
feel
to
like
earth.
you can't critique it at all, though. It's everyone must do it all the time, and that's
I think it's different in different situations. And for a second, I thought they might kick that field goal late, and I was like, "Ooh, Staley's gotten spooked by all the fails." But then he actually did go for it yet again. I think it also depends on who your personnel is, and to me, this Chargers defense has shown no faith in trusting them.
It's
so
the same.
Might as well go with the offense.
I was watching the Ravens today. The Ravens do not care. The Ravens could be inside their own 35, down 2 scores, and they're going for it on 4th and 2 because John Harbaugh at some point, or his analytics team, made the point, say, we are better off risking it, risk the biscuit, because we have Lamar and he's going to get those yards. And our defense isn't good enough. We got to win with our offense on the field. So I'm all for it, but you have to be imaginative to Mark's point as well. And it will be interesting to see where the Eagles go from here. As I understand it, Mark, and maybe you could shine a little more light on it, Jalen Hurts played pretty well in this game, but they have not won a home game yet this year. They're 3-6. This is a famously fickle fan base and an owner that's going to be plugged in to how the city and the region feels about the Eagles. They're 3-6. So I think there's going to be – I don't think the Eagles are a playoff team. I think this is an evaluation period for 2 months now, and the evaluation is going to be on Jalen Hurts, of course. And I just wonder if the evaluation is on Nick Sirianni as well, where the Eagles are right now.
I think the only thing, though, I mean, this was not a disastrous game on any level. I don't know. I don't think you – yes, you lost, but if Eagles fans are, like, up in arms about – what they watched, it's like, yeah.
One was the one that threw flowers at Nick Sirianni as he went in the tunnel after the game, and it wasn't like a beautiful job, Nick Flowers.
Right. But that's still if you're going to throw something from the stands at someone you're angry at, Flowers is a bit of a mixed message.
It was like a boot in the ear, and I'm like, what? Like, why did you have that in the first place?
They're like, just in
what
case
are we doing here?
We are really mad at Sirianni after the game, let's bring Flowers, because that'll like kind of throw people off. If that's something
that have been like pinned to my sports coat. Like it's a very strange.
It's not batteries, and it's like, okay, we can get away with that. And, Eagles fans, you always bring up the batteries stuff. Hey, how about prevent a quarterback from throwing for 80% against you? I felt bad for Jalen Hurts in their running game. This is the 5th quarterback to complete over 80% of his passes. Like most of the time that's happened in the league this year, it's come against the Eagles. Like,
and that's
the book is
that's
out
Jonathan Gannon's defense, and Jonathan Gannon and Brandon Staley were childhood friends, I learned during this game. So a little bit of an extra.
We didn't boo Santa. That's erroneous. That's an urban legend. Yeah, we had a jail underneath the old stadium, but so did your stadium. Oh!
I love that Thug using erroneous correctly there. That was
college educated.
You're gonna get sick of me saying this year in the NFC, but it's like, to me, the Eagles are still fairly far from evaluation. When you're like one loss behind the Falcons or Panthers for that spot, like all these teams that, to Mark's point, are not going to win the Super Bowl.
Sure.
They're going to be in the mix in like week 15.
From evaluation or from elimination?
I'm saying like there's.
I guess we're all being evaluated at all times.
Right. You're saying like they're looking ahead to next year. But to me,
they don't think it. I can tell you that.
Right.
I do. I don't. They just seem to be short of the bar if we're talking about teams that. I'm not saying they're not worth tracking or they're believing in on any level, but this seems like a team that has
Right.
worked.
Or pull me back in.
Okay,
Pull me back
Seattle
in,
needs
you know.
to step up, and maybe one other team too, or else, right now we have some really bad-looking teams that are in the AFC playoffs.
Well, go make a 7th playoff game and then be surprised that you get some sort of trash heap playing in January.
All right, let's get to the game we've all been waiting for.
With 33 seconds left, back to throw. Pressure again, gets it off. Touchdown! It's Matt Collins who makes a diving catch in the back of the end zone. And the Dolphins finally have their first touchdown in the second quarter this year.
There you go, Matt Collins. Go down and get it in the end zone, man.
Feel the excitement. Jimmy Cephalo. Didn't sound like Jason Taylor, but maybe it was. WQAM with the call. In the NFL's most turnover-filled game in more than 5 years, the Dolphins got a touchdown pass from their surprise starter, Jacoby Brissett, and they beat the Texans 17-9 in a game between two 1-7 teams, two teams on 7-game losing streaks. It played out exactly how we all thought. And Mark, here's a nice little fun fact for you. No players with matching names, but it was Miami's first win while committing at least 5 turnovers since October 18th, 1990.
Wow.
I'm stunned.
9 turnovers.
Where were you on October 18th, 1990, Mark? Camp Happiness.
No, 1990. High school. Sophomore year, I believe.
Blasting NXS out the trunk.
You can really feel the energy in the room when it's the Texans Dolphins. Kudos to the Dolphins for having a surprise starting quarterback. Doesn't really happen in the year 2021. No one seemed to know that Tua Tagovailoa was going to miss this game.
The Tua situation's bad because of, we just finished talking about leading into this game. All right, at least the Deshaun thing gets tabled until after the season. Go take off to it. Take flight. Make him make a difficult decision, and maybe you end up in a better place next year, no matter what. Well, he's got to stay healthy, and it's an issue with him. It was an issue in college with the hip injury. He was banged up last year. He's been banged up this year, and it's just going to make it harder for him to establish himself there if he's not playing. I mean, that's 6 games he's missed now.
9 turnovers is 2 more than in what many call the greatest game ever played, Colts-Giants. I always think they'd say, oh, it's the greatest game ever played. There were 6 fumbles in the first half of that game, 7 turnovers. Football wasn't really, I don't know.
I've heard this before from Greg, and he's correct.
I like to bring it out once every while, once there's a huge turnover game.
You think, the Giants being on the winning end of that game maybe plays into your hatred of it as well?
No, they lost. Johnny U going down the field. Started the legend.
Well, me.
Overtime. It's and then professional football was born.
I thought it was
some nice black and white photos from that contest.
I thought there was a goal line sneak. It was Johnny who did it.
No, that was
the other greatest game of all time.
I believe you're talking about the Packers, the Ice Bowl.
The Ice Bowl.
That's a different one.
Different.
There's another one.
Giants Colts was where Johnny U goes down, in overtime and leads them to the winning thing, and everyone watched on TV, and then people started watching TV.
All right, Ricky, can you do some digging on this? Sometimes I don't always trust Greg on this.
I brought up the box score to make sure. We view
as well
on the Colts.
I'm what? What have you?
You're on his side on this as well.
I agree with the idea that the best game ever, having 200 turnovers. There's some from a certain point of view, maybe that's not the best game ever.
And do you have anything to add before we move on, Greg, on Tyrod Taylor? You were pretty hot in the pants about Ty God. 3 picks, sacked 5 times.
Well, you see, he had 6 magical quarters. Now he's got 4 terrible quarters. That average, it's going to be tough to rank him on QB Index.
6 out of 10 is pretty good, though.
I know where I'd put him.
I try to do it about what's the average start that you've had, and he's really been all over the place.
NFL's greatest game ever. I mean, I'm taking the L on this. I'm letting you know, but I'm just trying to think: is there a different?
It's a
game?
book. I mean, they had the book called the greatest game ever played, and for whatever reason, that's the one they called.
It was
Johnny U.
But it was at the goal line, the touchdown that decided the game, right?
In overtime, I think they won it on a goal line. run? I don't know.
I thought it was, thought it was maybe Frank Gifford going over the pile there.
It could be time to rebrand the greatest game.
It was Alan Amici with a 1-yard run in overtime.
Oh, yeah, he blows out that hole.
But it was set up by Johnny Yu, like a great 2-minute drive to tie it, send it to
some controversy on that final play as well, as I recall. That maybe some.
Very much so. Well, I think it split people's opinions.
Erica, can you edit out the last 4 minutes since I brought up this turnover thing? It's my fault. It's my fault.
All right, let's never talk about that game again. Let's try to avoid talking about those two teams again.
Oh.
Let's move to Sunday Night Football.